This podcast is part of the Batman Universe Podcast Network, hosted by the BatmanUniverse.net. Check out everything related to Batman and the entire Bat family at the BatmanUniverse.net, including news and original content related to comics, movies, television, merchandise, video games, and more. Also, check out some of the other unique podcasts that TBU has to offer. Consider supporting this podcast by becoming a patron on Patreon. Even $1 can go a long way in supporting this content that you enjoy. Look for a link over at thebatmanuniverse.net to offer your support now. And now, on with the show.
In 2008, a podcast was created with one goal: to bring Bat fans around the world news related to movies, comics, video games, television, merchandise, and so much more. And now, the Batman Universe Podcast has returned.
Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of the TBU podcast. We were planning on doing a Black Adam review this time around, and unfortunately because of a couple of us, including myself, were a little under the weather due to the seasons changing. We were not able to all get to the theaters this past weekend to check out Black Adam. So we are still planning on doing that review, but in the meantime, we do have a very special episode that we recorded just a little bit ago. September of 2022 marks the 30th anniversary of Batman the Animated Series debuting, and because of that, we had our friend from Wires Don't Talk come back on to talk about some of the very popular and famous songs or scores from the animated series. So in this episode, you're going to hear Scott talking with Wires Don't Talk, and they're going to be talking all about and ranking some of the best Batman the Animated Series. So without further ado, let's start over to Scott.
Hey everybody, this is Scott with the Batman Universe Podcast, and today we have a very special episode, a Batman and the Animated Series related episode in honor of the anniversary, which just happened, about a month or so ago, 30 years. Joining me is Pat Grimes from Wires Don't Talk. You can find him at wiresdon'ttalktheband.com, as well as on a bunch of other social platforms, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, you name it. Pat, where else can we find you if I missed anything?
Did you say TikTok? That's the hot, trendy one nowadays.
I did.
Okay, that's all that's what the kids want. So that's what I'm thinking of.
And what kind of content of yours can we find at those places?
So I am basically just a funny music producer where I like to talk about the music of just nerdy stuff. Batman and comic book movies, that kind of stuff, video games. I just did a video on the roars of Godzilla's and just how they made different roars. So any kind of nerdy thing, and if it involves music or sound design, that's what you can find there. Also, I throw in some weird little short content there that just kind of shows my wacky side.
And for those who may not have known, you were a guest a few months back. We talked about the Batman soundtrack, which is a fun little podcast episode we did, kind of breaking down some of our favorite tracks. And on your channels, you have a video related to the Batman as well, extra or different song choices from the ones we talked about.
Yeah, I mean, you can spend a whole month talking about that soundtrack. But yeah, I'm happy to be back. I'm super excited to be. Just anytime I could talk Batman with the fellow Batman enthusiast, I am all in.
Well, it's great to have you back. I had so much fun last time. It was really very energetic, lively conversation too, which is always awesome. Today, I teased it was Batman the Animated Series. We both came up with our own top 5 lists of theme songs and tracks from Batman the Animated Series. So we picked different things, so you're not going to get duplicates. And the way this is going to work is we're going to start at the bottom of our list. So I'm going to start with my number 5, and then Pat you will reveal your number 5, and we'll go back and forth and we'll discuss each of the tracks. And, for those of you listening, we'll see if we pick your favorites. If you have tracks that you really like that you want to tell us about, feel free to leave us a comment. wherever you find this podcast. You can also write to us by email, tbu@thebatmanuniverse.com. Or you can message me on Twitter or the Batman Universe on Twitter, whomever, feel free to let us have it. But I will start with my number 5. So before I jump into this, I will say I tried to layer my songs. Like I tried to pick different areas of Batman the Animated Series. So I have my number 5 is the one I consider the super fun, goofy one, but then I will get into the more serious and dramatic and all that. So my number 5, I actually really had a hard time picking. I was debating between 2. The runner-up I did not pick was the Penguins opera from Birds of a Feather, just because I love that. It's very, operatic, but it's also kind of goofy and plays to the silliness of the Penguin a little bit in an episode that's actually kind of sad. But the one that did make the list was Cussing Out the Joker from Joker's Favor. And this track, it features the iconic Joker theme, but also adds a little goofiness to it. There's a really bombastic tuba.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. Yeah.
But it's trying to think of how to describe it. It's just very fun, and I feel like it's a very unique song too.
You're right on the money. I consider it happy-go-lucky. I don't know if that's a genre, but I think of Disney. It's not who you should think about Joker when you think of Disney, but yeah, it's such a happy, vibrant kind of tune. I'm glad you said the tuba as a bass is just a blast. It's not again, when you think of Batman, you think dread and murder and all this stuff, but instead it's just what are we on, a theme park ride or something?
Yeah, and you have whistling in there too, and it's just it's very much. I mean, the episode itself is kind of it is very lighthearted, but it's also a tone of sadness, because for those who need a refresher, it's about a man named Charlie Collins who gets road rage one day and ends up cursing out another driver, and it turns out that it's the Joker. So the rest of the episode is this man changed his whole life. He changed his name and everything, and all the while, unbeknownst to him, the Joker is stalking him for a favor that this man owes him.
That's such a common theme, and I'm going to talk about it quite a bit too in some of the songs, is you have these super happy, fun songs, and they're not a soundtrack to a happy, fun thing. It's always the Joker doing something horrific. I think that's a great choice. That's a great choice at number 5.
What's your number 5 pick?
So I think I picked Oddballs. I'm curious if hardcore Batman animated series fans think that what I picked was weird. And a lot of mine are going to be villain focused, just because I think this show nailed how they just treated villains. I think it's so much love came into the villains. So my very first one is Bat Attack from On Leather Wings, coming in at number 5. This is a song from the very first episode that aired. And I think that's important because it sets the tone, not just for the episode, but literally for the whole series. This was Man-Bat, which is not what you think as the first Batman villain you're going to show. I don't think he was actually, I think he was only in the comics at the time. I don't think he was ever on any kind of TV or something like that. So this really set the tone for the whole series. And I just think Man-Bat is such a random character to start with in a good way. It really showed that comics were a big influence for this show, but the music is super loud. It's very dissonant. The percussion is very much pounding, and I can't tell if it's mimicking the heartbeat of I think in that moment there's a security guard checking to see who made that noise. Is it his heartbeat? Is it our heartbeat watching it? Is it Man-Bat's heartbeat? And I just think that's cool that there's a pounding element to it. And then he's just flying around, and I'm thinking okay, it's kind of a horror thing, so it's kind of starting you off right at the point. The horns are very dissonant. It's such a menacing tone, so it fits that. You don't really see Man-Bat at all when you first meet him. You see a shadow, so hardcore fans are oh my god, it's Man-Bat, and everybody else is just as a kid you're what is this thing? Is that Batman? And obviously it's not. And this music is just so terrifying. And I think overall it's just an amazing intro to this new Batman story. it just checks all the boxes. It's powerful, it's suspenseful, it's kind of scary, and it just sets you up for this journey. So I think that's why I put it as my number 5.
I mean, it's a great track, and it's like I've listened to this track a lot. I listen to a lot of the soundtrack music, throughout the day and while I'm working or whatever. But like this track, like I like it because it is very like bombastic and loud, and it's also something that like as they bring Man Bat back, throughout the show, I think like once or twice more, but like it kind of becomes like emblematic of Man Bat the character. But also I like this track a lot because out of a lot of the like song choices that were available, this one feels very much like a serial because it kind of like it gets loud. You have like the percussion and everything, and then it dips real quickly, and it's almost like kind of like a zippy serial, like which kind of was the inspiration of the whole show. So yeah, it's fantastic theme and a fantastic episode too, and it's interesting too because I think one of the other things that works to this song's strengths is if you've seen the episode and like you listen to the music, it's one of those like tracks where you can kind of pinpoint exactly what's happening at every moment during the song.
It really fits the scene. Yeah, and just it's the tone. They just completely right out of the gate they understood tone and they just brought it. And it's just fun that it's Man Bat of all things. I think that's not who you think of when you think of your first Batman villain. So
made Man Bat cool.
Really? Yeah, like he's cool. I love him now in like recent comics. He's a blast.
Yeah. So my number 4 pick, it's a twofer. I feel like these have to get paired together, and depending on which version of the soundtrack you listen to, they can be. So they're both from Perchance to Dream, and it's the My Life is a Dream / Climbing the Bell Tower theme. And the reason why I have them mashed together like that is you get kind of two sides of what's going on in the episode. You get, the emotional Bruce Wayne, dream storyline when he's under the Mad Hatter's control. And then you also get kind of like a Hitchcock inspired, thriller with the Mad Hatter's theme mixed throughout. And so it kind of creates, both suspense and like the emotional beat to what's going on. And it's, together, it's just chef's kiss,
Yeah, no, definitely very ominous of a song. Like it's that bass creeps in a lot, and that really it creates a lot of anxiety, which is it very much fits the Mad Hatter to me too, because he tries to make everything like so positive, and then it starts creeping in that it's getting a little odd. Something's not right here. So I think it's an excellent song. There's a lot of juxtaposition in there too, because it's like kind of happy and kind of like positive, and then it's like, no, it's anxiety. Like we fooled you.
Yeah, it's great. What did you have for your number 4?
So my number 4 was or is Read My Lips, or Scarface's, or Scareface. Is it Scar or Scare? I always forget.
It's Scar.
It is Scar. I don't know. I think I got mine auto corrected. So it's from Read My Lips, which is when we have the ventriloquist as the villain. And I'm really not a jazz fan. I'll say that now. I mean, I like jazz music in like what it is, but I don't listen to jazz. But jazz music is the soundtrack of a city for me. Like it gives off the idea of nightlife, culture, like art, and just in that city. And hearing this at the beginning of Read My Lips, to me, grounds Gotham in reality. Like they use jazz really in that entire episode. But it opens with that boxing match and that music, and it really teleports me back into like Gotham's a city. You know what I mean? It's not a playground for Batman and his villains. It's quite literally like you could go to a jazz club with your best gal and have a drink and just enjoy the evening. It becomes so real. And that really hit me right out of the gate. And like, obviously the use of jazz, it's like an homage to classic gangsters. And that's what Scarface is. He's like the classic kind of mobster kind of dude. And it just fits obviously the tone of the whole episode, which is fun. But to me, it brings in a new genre into the soundtrack. And you mentioned that a bit with Penguin's opera as well. Like a lot of music in this animated series shows new genres, because like imagine never really hearing jazz before, this episode comes up, and then you're just exposed to this brand new genre of music, and it can really inspire someone. So I think the inclusion of that does a lot more than just reminding you of like old timey gangsters. And I thought that was such a cool addition that they put in for this.
Yeah, I would agree. And I don't think like they really use jazz they didn't really use it anywhere else from, my recollection in the soundtrack. This is kind of like its own unique vibe, like in the microcosm of, around this character. And it's like, in what you said, like, it kind of reminds people that it's a city, that's kind of something I thought about, is it really kind of brings us down to like the street level activities of what's going on. And that's probably the intention of, behind the choice, but it also like, it keeps it a little lighter too, and fast moving. And there's a lot going on there.
And the ventriloquist in this episode is not super horrifying, at least at the beginning, because like I think they're just robbing like the boxing match. I think they're robbing like the guy organizing it. And it just, I mean, we don't hear music in the comic books. You know what I mean? In a lot of the movies, they focus on Batman versus the villain. And I don't think we've ever really seen just like a guy going out on the town in Gotham and how that would maybe play out when there's not a supervillain rolling around. And I just really got that vibe when I just heard jazz music, which was cool to me. I just thought it was really cool.
It's almost like they were trying to like recreate like a Howard Hawks movie or something.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm really going to change the tone here, but my number 3, Feet of Clay, the main theme. And this is probably like my biggest, arguably my biggest downer pick. Like, this theme is the most tragic, theme I would argue in the series. It's got the heavy horns in there, and it very much feels like a 1940s, thriller movie, crime drama. It's so sad and so moving.
It's such a melancholy song. Like the fact, if you're listening to that in your car, you said you were listening to the soundtrack, like you were crying the whole time. There's no way you're driving to work. Like, everything's great. I can't wait for today. Like it's so melancholy. Like there's a lot of instruments in there too. If I recall, there's flutes. Like violins and horns were pretty popular. Like flutes were even in there. It just was it was a sad song to a sad episode. And I think they nailed the emotion of that.
For sure. Yeah, and it's much different from your pick.
Yeah, that is true. That is very true. My number 3 was Oceanside Aquarium from The Laughing Fish, because that's the thing. You think of this song as like, oh, it's not that bad. It is chaotic. It is absolutely terrifying. It fits the idea of the Joker really well, because the thing about it is the piano that plays in it. It plays like haphazardly. Like no one plays the piano like that in any song. They're just like hitting keys. Like I'm sure they just punched keys at random points to play the song. And it really makes you kind of go like, what was that? Puts you on the edge of your seat, which is really cool. And it's just ominous. And especially because like you as a viewer, you know what's coming, you know what's going on. There's a lot of crash rolls. But what blows my mind about crash rolls usually lead to something. So like a big moment in the song, or maybe like for a soundtrack, a moment in the scene. But this sometimes just goes nowhere. Like it just has a crash roll and nothing changes, which is like, that's chaos. No one writes music like that. It's so well written because it's supposed to not be. So it fits perfectly for the Joker. It makes you question kind of what he's doing. It feels like the soundtrack to maybe Batman's mind, because you don't know, he never knows what's next. And like a lot of violins, they're kind of random. They build on one another. Again, the piano just pierces. It goes in and out of rhythm. The drum speed for the song, like it actually speeds it up quite a bit. And it just, your brain never rests at all. It's like this. It's a very fun song by being like anxious and ominous and like what's coming next. And it's kind of like a fun horror movie where you're like, something's going to happen, but you don't know what is going to actually happen.
Right. Yeah. It's surprisingly intense, but I guess like, in the context of, what's going on, like they're going to track the Joker down with this whole laughing fish thing. And, the aquarium now has all these fish that have been Jokerized, and they're kind of grotesque and like hideous. And
yeah.
So you need that lead in. we're getting down to our number 2 picks. Before I start mine, I will admit something. I cheated on this pick. I went a little adjacent to the animated series. Like I'm still within that sphere, that whole Bruce Timm universe, but I had a really hard time nailing down. There's so many things to pick from, and there's lots of things I wanted to give a shout out to, but the theme I had to at least work in here somewhere, and it's my number 2 because it's not my favorite, but it's definitely always at the top of my list when I think of the animated series, is the main theme from Batman Mask of the Phantasm. And
that had to be in there. That had to be. How was that cheating, Quick? How was that cheating, do you think?
Because technically it's a movie. I mean, like it could stand on its own as a movie apart from, you could never watch the animated series and just find this movie.
True. That's
and watch
true.
it. And
I do link it though. I do link it.
Yeah, I always do too. Actually, when I do my rewatches, I always insert it there. I always make sure I watch that and Sub-Zero before I start. Like normally around season 3 before I start that.
That's
I
fair.
watch them both. But the reason why I picked it is it takes what's great about the main theme of Batman animated series, and it just makes it so much more haunting and beautiful. You have vocals in there. It's like it's hard to explain because it's a song that has a lot of like darkness and like passion to it, but there's also hope in there too. And it's kind of intermixed with like the instruments and the vocals. You have like both at play of like this, and it's like a theme where you can listen to it and you're like, you may not even know what this movie is, or the context of it. You listen to it and you're like, holy shit, like this is a Batman theme, just because of how interwoven I feel like the darkness and like that sense of heroism and hope is in here. And it's definitely like a song I use to kind of perk me up too, because it really charges me. But I feel like I'm rambling now.
I am so glad you said that. Like that is so well said, because you're right. It's telling like 2 stories in that song. The choirs always make me think of like religion. Like I always think of like Gregorian chants, and like it gives off a sense of like hell to me. You know what I mean? Like this is like a story of pain and destruction and hardship. But then, like you were right, like the orchestra comes in and makes it uplifting even too. So it's like a song about resilience. Like it's such a good theme. And also just the fact that you get a choir, like it's hard enough getting an orchestra. Like the orchestra doesn't sing. You have to go out and find people to do that. So the fact that they did that, like they just went that extra mile. And I think that's super cool that they really wanted to tell that. And I think they were really trying to capture, like you said, those 2 kind of stories all in one song, which is not easy to do in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, no, it's very complex, but I guess like since it was accompanying a movie that had a theatrical release, if you can call it that, I think it was only in theaters for 2 weeks before they pulled it, but still have to this day see it in theaters. It's kind of a grudge I carry with me from childhood. I remember when it was out and we just couldn't make it because it was over the holiday season, I think. But
you could rent a movie theater, by the way. I have done it. Like you could do it if you did it for like your friends. You get enough people, you can rent a movie theater and do it. Just saying. And like call around your local theaters.
We'll have to do it. I missed it on Batman Day. It was up there. I wanted to go, but we had other things going on. But yeah, we'll get there eventually. But it is, it's just such a complex, piece of music that it's, arguably one of my favorite Batman tracks of all time.
Definitely makes sense. It's really a fantastic one. I think it's great that you included it. If anyone says you're cheating, I don't think anyone will, because I think everybody is like, yeah, that song's awesome and that movie's awesome.
Let's hop over to your number 2.
So my number 2, Nothing to Fear, the subtitle, which from Nothing to Fear. I really love the Scarecrow. Like I love him as a Batman villain. He's always creepy. Obviously fears like just his personality. And I think this theme is what the Scarecrow is. For so long ago, they still capture it. Like the violin spirals, which is It's a very eerie sound it comes up with. And there's a chime like faintly in the background, like it's not present at all. And the brass section, it makes the song easier to listen to if you just heard that violin the whole time. Like if you listen to that violin and chime for 10 minutes, I'm pretty sure you'd have a panic attack if you just listen to that. So the brass is kind of smart how they put that in there, but it just creates fear. It's like unease, like, and it's right at the beginning where you just see this man dressed as a scarecrow flying in a helicopter. So they just immediately captured this very scary thing. And I know that, like, especially in the Batman animated series, he's had a lot of different designs. I think they've had I think he had two changes, if I recall, like his design, and I think maybe even different voice actors.
Yeah,
but the song always stayed the same. Like you could have put that in Batman Begins and it's like people would have been like, yeah, that's a scarecrow. You could always use that as his theme. And I think it's timeless. And that's why I love it so much, that they just like hit the nail on the head for this character, that you can always use this song and you'd be like, oh, this is a scarecrow thing, isn't it? Like you're going to know what it is. So that's why I really, really fell in love with that song.
Yeah, no, it's unsettling and it's I love it. I can hear it in my head right now, and you know, it's one of the themes that's like that's always stuck with me, and it's one of the ones I wished I could put on my list, but there wasn't enough space. But yeah, you're right with the designs and like Scarecrow. Honestly, I feel like the animated series, you know, for me was a vehicle that really made Scarecrow like cool for me. Like
yeah,
like you had the design changes, you know, the costume changes, and they just kept getting creepier. And you know, different voice actors, and like the first voice actor was a little more kind of theatrical and Shakespearean, and then you had in the last season you had Jeffrey Combs take over and turn him into like an absolute like emotionless nightmare.
I feel like that always happens with Scarecrow, even in the comics. Like I'm actually reading Fear State right now. Like he's always a different personality, but it always fits the character. Like sometimes he's just monotone. Sometimes he's insane. Sometimes he's like kind of charming. Like Batman Begins, I think he's like kind of charming too. And like, I do love that. Like no matter how you paint him, he's always Scarecrow.
Yeah. And you know, this theme, yeah, it's that perfect just sense of, you know, dread, but also I feel like there is kind of theatrical quality to the song too.
Definitely. Yeah. I think that's well said. Definitely.
And now we're getting to the top of our list. And before I reveal my number one, I'm going to do a quick shout out to my brother who is probably listening to this or will be, and apologize for not picking the Heart of Ice theme. That was, I heavily debated that and I wanted to, but there were so many good songs and that one had to sit on the cutting room floor, but it is a very beautiful song and I wanted to give it a proper nod. But my number one, I had a tie of sorts. I heavily debated between this one and another one, but they both revolve around the same villain. And since that villain is Two-Face, I guess I will mention both of them, you know, two songs for Two-Face. So the runner-up more so to this category will be a track called The Great Equalizer from the Two-Face Part 2 episode. And then my main winner would be Harvey's Nightmare. That is what opens us up into Two-Face's world in the Part 1 episode. And the reason why I picked both of these is, particularly with Harvey's Nightmare, it's a nightmare track, but it has that really sad Two-Face theme, which is like, you're gonna have to help me out on the instrument here because I am not a music person, but it's like a flute or something, and it's just
honestly, I don't know what it is. I just think of it. I think it's like a child's flute. Like it sounds childish at times. I think it's like not a real flute. I think it's like a toy. Honestly, to give that's what I think. I really don't know. You're right to be confused. Honestly,
it's so haunting and unsettling, and it like. You know, the Harvey's Nightmare track kind of lures you into, you know, the psyche of someone whose mind is fractured and is about to be cracked open, and this other personality is going to be revealed. It's very ominous and foreboding, but it's also horribly depressing. Maybe not as depressing as Feet of Clay, but it is definitely, revolving on that level of kind of a downer. And then The Great Equalizer has all of that in there, but also, this kind of fight to it. Like there's a sense of like action and intrigue, because it does precede a big action moment at the end of part 2. So you have that going on, but the actual, nightmare theme is mostly the Two-Face theme, which is just so tragic and really emblematic of the character of just, someone whose mind is about to be, whose mind has been in constant, pursuit by this other entity that's, living with them, and it's, finally coming to a fold, and it's just, up to this point in the series, we've seen Harvey Dent and he's kind of seemed cool, calm, and collected. But then, we get his solo episode where his other personality is going to come out, and right away, this song tells us that this is something he's been living with for a really long time.
Yeah, it really captures the tone of the character, the tones of the episodes, obviously, too. And it just is, it's very sad, as the character himself is just sad. And it definitely makes you feel that a bit, which is not going to translate at all to my last pick. My last pick is incredibly different. And I think this maybe speaks to me as a music producer a little bit more, because I picked the sub main title of The Last Laugh, which this is playing at the moment where I think I talk about it. The guy is just driving, and the garbage truck has all like the Joker gas going on. Because this song is probably the funnest song to listen to in this whole series. It's so fun. The drums are actually amazing. The snare is so crisp. Like, music producers would kill for this level of drum production. It's so well done. Also, it's like kind of funky, like maybe a bit jazzy. You know what I mean? I think there's some other genres at play there. It creates like a song, not just an orchestral piece that we're so used to hearing. But I love it so much because it's just badass. There's no way I can professionally talk about it like that. It is like, it's the Joker. It's the Joker. He's the big bad. Like, you can envision him just walking down the street to this song. And he's just like, it's very confident for him. And it makes the song his own, especially with the circus music. Like, it's such a nice touch. I don't think I've ever heard such a dramatic shift to circus music. Like, it inspires me to make my own music like that. And it's like, it's this rough and tough song, great energy, and then boom, it's circus music. And then it's in the show, it's used because actually that truck driver who gets hit with the gas, once he gets a whiff of the toxin and he starts laughing, is the second they start playing the circus music. So it's also like genius how they work that into the show. But you just like immediately know this is the Joker. It isn't like Oceanside Aquarium where it's like there's kind of mystery to it. It is the Joker's coming. Get ready. We're going to take him on. If I was like a professional fighter, like a boxer, this would be my walkout music. Like, and don't cut the circus music either, because that is the insanity. Like, imagine it's like, oh, wow, he's got this rough and tough song. And all of a sudden it's just like a happy, like, oh, we're at the circus. It's like, this guy's nuts. This guy's out of his mind. So I absolutely love this song. It's probably such a weird one to pick as the first, as like my number one, but I just think I just think it's such a good song. It's just a great song. It doesn't even need to invoke emotion. It's just like, I'll play this any time of day, even with the circus music. Like, I love it.
I love it too. It is, I heavily consider this one because it is just so much fun. And it's one of the ones where like they play it throughout the whole episode, this track. And like, depending on what part of the episode, like it's funny because I think I've watched this episode enough where like I just have like random strings of dialogue from like the characters and like everything going on, that every time I hear this track, that's my first thought is like, yeah, that opening with that guy in the truck, and then it hits Alfred, and then later on when they play it again, it's when Batman's on the barge, he's going to confront the Joker, and his two henchmen are getting ready to like gear up and beat the crap out of Batman, and it's just like it's such an amp up, like, you're ready to, you're just like no one can see me, but I'm like throwing my arms around everywhere. But
Yeah, I was doing the same thing.
You're just like ready, you're itching for like a fight, something dramatic, something to go on, because it's just such an intense, like, fun song.
Yeah, that could be on your gym playlist, like no doubt. That wouldn't be out of character, I think, for anyone to put that on there.
I think my gym playlist is going to be the Maxi Zeus themes, because they're like all drums.
Yeah, right. Hey, that's good. It gets your heart moving. That's good.
Yeah. But yeah, that's. Do you have any last thoughts before we wrap up the list segment?
God, I think we geeked out really hard on that last one, so I think that's a great way to end it.
That has been our list. We're not done just yet, but if you want to listen to these tracks, I will put them in the show notes, but I will not write the names of the songs just in case you don't want any spoilers. I will just write number 5, number 4, number 3 for each of us, our respective lists. So you won't be spoiled ahead of time. I won't lay out the names of the tracks. But if you have thoughts, if you disagree, if you agree, whatever, you can let us know. I will also have links to places below where you can let us know and air your grievances, or tell us that the main title from The Last Laugh is arguably the greatest Batman song ever composed. Fine by me. But before we end this episode, Pat, I wanted to ask, since we're on the topic of Batman the Animated Series, do you have any favorite episodes?
We talked about it a bit. I think Feet of Clay is my favorite. Number one, Ron Perlman is Clayface. I didn't know if you know that. When I rewatched it, I was like, that's definitely Ron Perlman. Like, as a kid, I didn't know who that was. That's cool. But I just think it's like, it's so tragic, and like they paint this villain very well, and it really captures Batman for me. Like, full disclosure about me, I became a Batman fan in college, really. Like, I became like a hardcore like comic book guy in college. So as a kid, like, the animated series was fun, but that's all it was. It was just fun. I didn't really know these characters, just like, cool to watch. But like going back to it and revisiting it, I really love what they did with that character, how dramatic it is. His death scene is, I forget if it's that, when he's just slamming into the monitors. I was like, oh my God, like, this is so powerful. Like, this is a cartoon. This is so intense to me, and I absolutely adore it. I really adore that episode. So I got to say that's probably my favorite. Do you have a favorite, Scott?
That's a hard one.
Right. That's pretty hard for me too.
On the note of casting, because Batman Animated Series has fantastic cast, and in other episodes of our podcast, we talked about this. Most notably, I think in our Riddler ranking episode, I talked about how John Glover is like a definitive Riddler voice, and like everything I engage with, like, it's always going to be John Glover for me. But something I was reminded of today when I was prepping for this episode is that Stacy Keach, he voiced Andrea Beaumont's father in Mask of the Phantasm, but I forgot. Maybe I learned it before and forgot, but I relearned today that he also voiced the Phantasm itself, like that shadowy voice.
That's so cool. I didn't know that.
Is Stacy Keach, which is extra amazing for me. But going to favorite episodes, that's such a hard one, because I'm always torn. Like, the Two-Face two-parter is always up there for me. It always ranks at the top. But, I might actually, for this episode, I might have to go back and give it to Heart of Ice. Just because, like, that is such... That episode redefined the Mr. Freeze character. Prior to that, most of what people knew about Mr. Freeze, or his origin, really was more so in line with, like, just, what you saw in the 60s TV show, where he's just like some guy who just was stealing stuff, Yeah. But Heart of Ice really kind of brought home that idea of, he's a guy who is a tragedy. He had a wife and she's got some rare illness. And like, that whole thing was really born out of the animated series. And, that episode, it's a fun action episode with a great Batman villain, but also it's an episode that really showcases, all the great episodes do, even in Feet of Clay, but really showcases Batman's like heart and sense of humanity as he finds out that like, yeah, Mr. Freeze is like terrorizing Gotham, but like, he was also screwed over by this CEO who's getting like a Humanitarian of the Year award or something. And so it's like this, Batman's trying to mete out justice all around in the way he thinks is best for, the citizens of Gotham, and also right wrongs that were committed upon like this new, villain who's appeared. So it's a very complex, sad, emotional episode.
Yeah, no, that's a top-notch one. It's great for the character. And like you said, the corruption, it's always a big part of the Batman lore. So I do think that's like, it's hard for Batman to make those decisions. Like he understands where Victor is coming from. Yet again, you can't do that. And it paints those good philosophical questions. I think like any good Batman story does.
And that snotty CEO is also voiced by Mark Hamill. So that's kind of fun.
That's amazing.
Not the Joker, just Mark Hamill doing another role. Because I believe, I don't know. I have to go back and reread it. I thought like before he got the Joker, he was trying for a different character. Then he ended up getting the Joker, and obviously the rest is history. But I think it had to do with something with the Heart of Ice episode. But because I think they recorded that first, but I mean, it didn't air first, but that was like one of the first episodes they recorded.
Oh, interesting.
So I will have to fact check that one. But yeah, that's been our list. That's been our animated series talk. One thing I wanted to mention, since I have you here, is I have been watching some of your videos.
I appreciate it. Thank
you. They're always fun. And I wanted to give a shout out in particular to what I call like the highlights of, sorry, my cat's like jumping all over me right now. He wants attention. What I call kind of like the highlights of my day when I see them, the Pat's Pops videos.
Oh boy.
Because they are so much fun. Like they're real quick, but like, there's just like such a fun vibe to them. And like to full disclosure, like I'm not a Funko Pop collector per se. Like I collect action figures.
You don't waste all your money is what you're saying. You're not like me.
Oh no, I waste all my money on comic books and McFarlane figures. Yeah. So it's still being wasted. It's just, I have to
pick your poison at that point. Yeah.
I have to drop the axe somewhere. And I, my wife probably feels better that Funko Pops are not included in everything else. But those videos are so much fun. And of course, like the wacky snack reviews too are also very fun. And
I appreciate it.
You have a lot of like just really high energy. And so everybody listening, I implore them to watch your videos. Last time we talked about like your music producer YouTube videos, which are also really good. But I have been diving more into the Pat Grimes multiverse, the Wires Don't Talk multiverse of videos.
Yeah, we got to get a couple movies going on here. That one is, I will say, I have to give a shout out to two people who helped with Pat's Pops, because Pat's Pops was not my idea. And that's how you know I have a good idea when I don't make it up. Eric Ladd of Retro Game Remix, a fantastic YouTuber, amazing musician. If you love video game music covers, he has albums. You have to listen to them. They're so good. But he told me, because he's a successful YouTuber, and he was giving me some advice. And he said, you should really talk about your Funko Pops to do like a TikTok reel, YouTube short. And I said, it's a great idea. And I do Pat's Wacky Snack Reviews where I'm like this crazy, zany guy. And I said to my wife, I was like, hey, do you think I should just do it like Pat's Wacky Snack Reviews? And she goes, no, you should do it like the opposite. So it was a combination of my wife's idea and Eric Ladd, who came up with that. And I said to her, I was like, I think I'm going to put my love of Frasier into this character. So if you're a fan of Frasier, that background may look familiar to you. That is Niles's apartment in Frasier. So that is heavily influenced by my love of Frasier and my love of Funko Pops, which is a ridiculous combination of things.
That's okay. So yeah, I didn't recognize the background. I haven't watched much Frasier, but yeah, you dress up for these, and it's just like very.
I am in a suit. I record in my garage. That was a 90-degree day, and I can't open the garage because like everybody wants to like cut their grass at the time that I like to film. So I am dying when I record those. I am melting. Like I have to get my suit dry cleaned after those. I'm working on a thing to give me a better recording space, so I'm not doing that ever again. But no one's ever commented on this, but if anyone always says like you're only in one suit, I am not changing suits. It is too hard. That I suffer for that craft.
No, it's fine. It creates like a synergy to, or well, that's not the word I'm looking for. It keeps the consistency to it, and so I love when a new one pops up in my feed because it's just so like. I think what it is the juxtaposition of like how like that atmosphere you create, like to it, and it's like it's a Funko Pop, they're everywhere.
I'm so happy you get it right. Like I treat them, for those of you who haven't seen it, maybe the sales pitches. I talk about my Funko Pops, which I have a disgusting collection. You can see them in the background of my videos. And my wife also collects them, which is very dangerous. So like I talk about them like they're fine art, like they're just this high-end stuff. They're $12 figures. I've spent more, and I'm embarrassed to say how much money I've spent on some of them, but like I just treat them as if they're just this high art, that I'm better than these people and I am rich in Funko Pops, and it just is a complete weird fever dream of a concept. But I appreciate that you like them so much, because that's definitely like probably the weirdest thing that I think I do on my brand. It
kind of like, it's not the same, but I think it takes me back in time. I remember when Jim Varney used to do those. I can't remember what those videos were called. It wasn't Ernest. It was like he dressed up like a rich person and like did these really weird like video bumpers. Like they're very short and they're kind of like a similar vibe, and it was like Jim Varney, and like as a child you recognize him as, oh, that's the guy who plays like Ernest in all those movies. But
yeah, that's a huge compliment. I can't thank enough for that. That's awesome.
But do you have any favorite lines of Funkos that you collect?
That's a really good question. So typically my collections are heavily on the Batman stuff. I have some of my favorite ones are the ones from Death Metal or Batman Metal. Like I have the Red Death. I'm looking at some of them right now. The Red Death, the Batman Who Laughs. He's one of my favorite villains. I have some. I subscribe to DC Universe, like the comics online. So I got like the Batman Diamond collection, like all that kind of stuff. I did a video on that one. I also really like Venom from Marvel. He's probably the only Marvel character that I really, really like. So I do have like a bunch of him. And I'm very proud to say this, I have every single Seinfeld Funko Pop, every single one. My collection is complete. And that brings me great joy because that is one of my favorite shows of all time. So I would say those lines are some of the ones that I'm always looking for. And I have a lot of good Godzilla ones too, but I can go crazy with those. So I drew the line at that.
Well, plus like all the Godzilla figures, like for people not in the know, Godzilla collecting is a very expensive hobby.
I have I'm counting them right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7 NECA figures, and it was right before they discontinued. Like they announced that they're not making any more, and I got like the original Godzilla, like stuff from the new movie. I got Shin. Sorry, but I know this is not a Godzilla podcast, but I got really lucky in collecting those right before everything, kind of went away. So yeah, if you are a Godzilla fan and you don't have, if you want to start collecting, it's very tough. It's definitely very tough right now.
I maybe one day I'll hijack this podcast and turn it into the Godzilla collecting podcast, because my Batman cabinet shelf is also equal in size to my Godzilla figure shelf.
Yo, you got to send me a photo of that, because if you have any, we're going way too far into Godzilla lore now. Because I'll ask you questions later, but send me a photo because I would love to see what you got cooking on that shelf. Also, your Batman collection as well.
Yeah, I have one of my favorite pieces is Shin Godzilla. I have all the forms when they released the Bandai ones. So I have like that. My wife hates it when I refer to the second form as cute, but when he's like over Tokyo, like Japan, crazy, and he's all like kind of like a little tadpole running around, like that one, and then like the other forms as he grows. But yeah, they're going to any Godzilla or kaiju related Fest, if you don't buy the figures when they're first released, like those things jump in price, like it's going out of style, like it gets crazy.
I think you guys have Kaiju Fest. There's Chicago, right? Doesn't Chicago have it?
G Fest every July.
G Fest. I want to go to G Fest so bad. I've never been to G Fest.
Wow.
Let's do G Fest together. Let's do it.
Well, if you come next year in July, let me know and we will go, because it is 40 minutes away from my house. I'm
going to hold you to it. I've never been to Chicago, so I would love to experience that.
Last time I went was when Akira Takarada was there. It was his last con appearance. He passed away, I think, last year. But
that's amazing that you got to see him. Wow.
Yeah, it was. I have photos. He was really sweet, like really nice man. Like one of the best panels I've ever been to, like including Batman, like ever. But we are getting way off topic. But yes, you come to G Fest. Yeah, I will go to that. It's usually like mid-July or mid to late July every year. But going back to Batman. Oh, actually Venom. So are you a big like Venom reader?
That's tough because there's so much of Venom that I haven't read, but I know of. Like I haven't even read like the anti-Venom line and stuff like that, which I want to read. I just finished Donny Cates' version of Venom, and I think there's a lot of controversy with it. I love what Donny Cates did with Venom. I absolutely love the series, and I know some people didn't like it, and I'm going to be dead honest. I have no idea why they don't. I love, and also the art. Oh, I think Venom. The art of Venom is something that really draws me to him. He's such a cool character and whatnot. So
yeah, no, I loved that series too. It was phenomenal. It was my favorite book for a while. Like I got so excited, and then when it was running at the same time as like Immortal Hulk, like those are like my Marvel picks. Like as people can probably guess, I kind of lean more towards like body horror, like sci-fi, but.
So you're a big The Thing fan. You're a big fan of The Thing.
Yeah, actually the drive-in not too far from my house is running Tremors and The Thing this upcoming weekend.
I'm hoping to do a video on The Thing's soundtrack because it really is. I hate it in a good way. I absolutely hate it. The part where the crater, I think the song is called The Crater. I hate that song with all my heart, but I love it so much because it is so riddled with anxiety. Like if you want a panic attack, just listen to it.
Is that the one where they're watching like that video footage of those guys standing around the ship? Right.
Yeah.
Because I can hear it now. Like I know what you're talking about.
It's like, because I listened to it. There's an event that I'm doing and I talk about it, and I had to listen to it a lot for a thing that I'm doing, like a talk. And I was like, I hate this. Like I got up, I couldn't sit still in my chair. I was like, I hate this, but it's such good. It's so well written as a song.
It's that soundtrack is, it feels so simple, but it's so effective.
It is. John Carpenter is he didn't make the music for that one. It's like one of his first times, but he said to the composer, and I forget his name. It's hard to pronounce. He said minimalism is key. That was John Carpenter's note, which is, anytime that man gives you notes, you listen. That's for sure. So
I will say, as an aside, I saw John Carpenter in concert once. I want to say like 5 years ago now.
I'm very jealous. His albums are really good.
It was one of the coolest concerts I've ever been to in like my entire life. Like he just went through his catalog, his filmography, and then some of his like tracks that he's been doing, outside of the movie sphere. And it's just,
he really is the man. I want to say he's the best horror director of all time. I mean, I don't know if anyone would even argue that, but I really do.
I don't think I can throw an argument.
I'm sure like some hardcore people might be able to say it. If you're still listening at this point, please let us know. Hopefully we've still gripped you. Let us know if you have your favorite horror music or horror movie producer or whatever, all the hats he wears.
Yeah. But we hijacked the Batman pod, but, this getting back on topic, and then we'll close out. Again, thank you everybody for listening. Hope you enjoyed our picks. You can find Pat over at wiresdon'ttalktheband.com or looking up Pat Grimes or Wires Don't Talk on your different social media feeds. Pat, I don't know if do you have any specific ones you want to direct listeners to more so than others?
I mean, anywhere you can get my ugly mug in your YouTube or social media space, do it. But I will say too, if you've enjoyed Scott and I geeking out and you want to geek out, the Discord is something I just started a Discord, and it's all of that. So if you're very passionate about anything nerdy, we're talking about it in the Discord, and I'd love to have you in there as well. The link is in my on my YouTube page. It's on my website. Please join us and nerd out with us and have more conversations like this.
All right, that has been the Batman Universe podcast. Thank you guys for listening, and I hope you have a phenomenal week.
Hopefully you guys enjoyed that awesome discussion with Wires Don't Talk. Be sure to check out his YouTube page for all kinds of other conversations regarding music and all kinds of other pop culture aspects. Links can be found in the description below. Outside of that, we have a bunch of stuff over at our website that you guys can check out, whether it be news, reviews, content, original content, that is, other podcasts. We have all kinds of other stuff to take a look at. If you were really hoping for a Black Adam review, be sure to check out our friends over at the Batman Universe Bat Fans podcast. They have a review of Black Adam up this week as well, so be sure to check that out. Outside of that, be sure to check out us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. We have a Discord. You can find all of our social links at the top of the page over at thebatmanuniverse.net. In addition to that, if you are interested in having us to have a specific topic to discuss, just as a heads up, some of the things that we're going to be covering here very soon is obviously the Black Adam review. We are going to be talking about Battle of the Super Sons, the animated film that just released recently. We also want to talk about Batman Hush because the anniversary of that has just occurred. So there's a lot of different things that we want to discuss. But if you have a topic leading up to the holidays or a specific thing you'd like us to cover in the coming months, shoot us an email, tbu@thebatmanuniverse.net, or you can leave your comments in the podcast section or in the comment section wherever you're listening to the podcast, and it'll come back to us. With all of that being said, that is everything for this episode. For Scott and myself, thanks again to Wires Don't Talk for coming on, and we will see you guys next time.